Zaum is fucking dead.
Oh, they're fucking done.
It's over
Like just instantly disintegrated.
in a heartbeat. In the
Like just
most disco way possible.
I've been talking about this for a couple days now. There's nothing more appropriate than the way this went down.
So,
So
Zaum is the company that made Disco Elysium, one of the best games I've ever played in my life. And the news came out earlier this week that the cultural collective has ceased to be due to the key folks behind it being ousted from the company involuntarily. It fucking sucks. Kurvitz, Heinz Pierre, and Rostov, and the founder Luiga, all of the people that kind of made the groundwork for what Disco Elysium is, are no longer there. And there's a whole lot about that we can get into. But what were you going to say?
so the nature of this, I keep thinking about it, is its appropriateness
Mm-hmm.
because I forget the name. I can never remember their names, but one of the heads of the studio who is now gone posted this like fucking I don't know what to call it, like
Martin
manifesto
Martin Luiga. Yeah.
or some just massive essay about why they left and what happened and like the description of from interviews in the past of like, well, how did Disco Elysium happen has been that the heads of the studio were like political pariahs because of their insane and like fucking like fanzine about communism and the political spectrum that made them like despised in Estonia.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just got drunker and drunker and drunker until
Mm-hmm.
they decided to make a video game and
Yeah.
like just kind of bullshitted their way to a finish line.
Yeah.
Um,
I talked about I talked about it when I was shouting out there was that really great little 30-minute mini documentary on like the making of it. But like yeah, they just the creator kind of the creator of the writer who wrote A Sacred and Terrible Air just released that book, and it was, it's sold abysmally because it was just like 1,000 copies in Estonia. Like that's about the best you're gonna get, and just got super depressed after that, and like went into this insane Harry like stupor of just drugs and alcohol, went on a bender and just kind of fucking lost it. Came out the other side and met some artists, musicians, and then listened to their grandkids tell them, hey, why don't you idiots stop working on your old shit and make a video game because people care about those things instead. And they took that advice and created a collective as well, of all of their talents, and basically built this game around the idea of like, pulling together these insanely talented creative individuals.
the most fascinating thing about that story is the point where they realize they have so tarnished their own personal representation in Estonia that the ability to work in their native language is gone. So they like must reach out to the English art and game community because they haven't burned the bridges there yet.
I mean, it's really, I'm getting it. It's the most disco shit ever. It just like they sound like characters from the world they created.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, the quote that is being used is the one from Joyce in the game, who says, "I can't. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself." And you're like,
And
yeah.
here we go. So, step one. So much of their commune was not actually written down, it was just verbal agreements, which allowed the investors in their company to just push them right the fuck out of said company.
Because what
Um,
because what was confusing about the announcement, I should say initially, was the fact that they specified that Zaum, the creative collective is dissolution, the dissolution of the Zaum cultural collective, excuse me,
Yeah.
which he mentioned is distinct from the Zaum company.
Yeah.
Um, and it's
Seems
like,
like that
wait,
would have been a mistake.
yeah, and it's like, wait, what does that mean, right? And that led to like the initial like, what is the game, and what is the collective? What does all this mean? And I think we've gotten some light shed on it a little bit since then.
It is totally fascinating. I think this might be the only instance in the entire history of video games that a character in the video game killed the video game.
Yeah,
In that the light
yeah,
bending
yeah,
man, who
yeah,
I need to remind people, the light bending man is a real person. It is their primary investor in
yeah.
Disco Elysium, and Zaum literally got the bean counters out and got all the creative leads fired, and is now hiring for monetization expertise. And the one that got me the worst, as people pointed out, Disco Elysium is a game that is like Estonian. There are not many games from Estonia. You can feel when a game's made in Ukraine. You can feel a game's made in China. You can feel a game is made in the US or Canada or Japan. But Estonia didn't really have a lot of really intense representation until now. And a lot of that was its writing and its incredibly bizarre tone. There are no Estonian writers left at Zaum. The current lead writer and only writer is a guy who graduated from a Boston University from the States. And their LinkedIn page is specifically asking for like British and American writers.
Um,
Like, I cannot
yeah.
possibly imagine a guy from the United States writing a game like Disco Elysium.
No, so that's what yeah, that's what I was saying before, just how like the game itself was such a unique take because it came from, again, just Estonia, like a world that's so like we don't know anything. There's a lot of like Eastern European flavor that is like already just distinct in that we don't encounter that often. And here in this case, it's like this brilliant, scathing, hyper political like angle that is just so impossible to be cultivated in what we're familiar with. It couldn't have been cooked up in any kitchen on this continent, you know? It's very distinct, and losing that sucks. And then they of course specify that in the founding of like the team that it took to get the game made, they had to get the capital, they had to get the money from these same people, from this like mega rich lightbending guy essentially. So like, you know, the ones that are responsible for it getting to where it is now in that initial way are of course going to do what they do when they see something become a runaway success, and just they'll be unable to resist getting in the kitchen and trying to have fingers in every pie, you know. They're also the ones who are, of course, were responsible for like doing things like brokering an adaptation with Amazon and shit. Where when that news came out, it was clearly weird, and everyone was like, "Really? A disco spin-off TV series? Like, why? Okay, what?" And it's like, yeah, of course, because this is the same position that Guitar Hero was in when Bobby Kotick took the name and then started shitting all over Rock Band as the imitator, you know,
I
long
will say,
after
I
Harmonix
will
left.
say, Disco Elysium and but I don't know if many people even remember, there is a Disco Elysium 2 being currently developed right now.
Yes, and an
Um,
adaptation of a Terrible and Sacred Air into game form.
yeah. But Disco 1 and Disco 2 are somehow both going to have the distinction as being the most interesting games ever made. Disco because it is, and Disco 2 because I can't wait to see what the fuck that game is like. Like, I am fascinated by the attempt.
It's incredible. It's just, but it doesn't, like, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how off base it'll be, but it's also just like, yeah, but they don't care. All that matters is the name has established itself. It is now valuable. Those two words, when put together, mean something, and that's all the money people care about, right? And the fact that like anything that is a part of the soul or the creative part of what made this good is like disposable is like not of any real consequence to them. They have no problem forging ahead, putting out something bad and just hoping that enough people will not be, aware of this kind of story, pulling out the magnifying glass and finding out about it, because they'll just be like, "Oh, it's that thing. Yeah, I like that. Well, oh, there's another one. Okay." And that
So
usually works fine.
I feel there is room in the critique because so Metal Gear Solid prior to Disco, I want to say that Metal Gear Solid was the most overtly, unavoidably political game to ever exist. Right? It was just like literally telling you about the nature of personal sacrifice in the Cold War and how
Mm-hmm.
politicians ruin everything for
Mm-hmm.
like an hour in a cutscene. And you still got to talk to people. Uh, I remember talking to people in college, and I'm sure you do too, that went through Metal Gear 1, 2, and 3 and like didn't get it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like at all. Like literally like, oh man, Snake's such a badass, gotta kill
Cool
people for
spy
American.
guys. Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
are you actually fucking serious? And
Absolutely.
now Disco is like the next level because there's nothing cool happening in Disco Elysium. It's literally a bunch of pathetic losers sitting around
Yeah. Yeah.
arguing a bunch of fucking politics all day and like maybe getting drunk.
I
And like the idea that the audience for that game that enjoyed it would still go on to not get it would be the most hilarious thing in the world to me.
but it's absolutely going that way because I know exactly what you're describing because and I also remember when if I remember like I feel like we popped off harder at a handshake more than anything else in the entire franchise of Metal Gear Solid up to that point. A denied handshake was like the craziest shit ever, you know. But in this case, you're going to have to see the skeleton form of it. But what industry has not more than video games has prepped you to see the bones of the thing reanimated by a necromancer to be like a husk of its former self, more than fucking video games. It's the perfect industry for this. We've seen this a million times. The only thing I wonder is the other thing video games do often is have somebody who gets together with some creative people, they make something amazing. The corpos step in, they can't resist, they ruin it all because they gotta, monetize as hard as possible, fuck up the process, put the debt, whatever the fuck the reasons are. The thing blows up, they take it for themselves, and then those people have to leave the ship and then go form a new one somewhere else if they still feel like working on this type of shit. But whereas there's your whether you're talking about your fucking platinum games or your yacht clubs or your respawns or your like there's a million examples of like these companies that pop back up after they're forced into exodus from the thing that they put their work into. These guys are like not actually video game people by default, so there's no guarantee you're going to necessarily see that in them or that they'd have the drive to want to interface with this medium anymore. So that kind of leaves me worried.
I also have to say that as this news broke and people were understandably upset, there was also the very typical video game industry like side dish, which is game websites going, look, most of the people who work at Zaum are still there. The creative control of like one or two people isn't the whole game. Games are a team project, and it's just the most pathetic fucking shit ever. Are games a team project? Yes. Are they a collaborative effort between everyone on the fucking team? Absolutely. Do the director and the writer and the gameplay designer have fucking more impetus than other people? Yeah. Hideo Kojima has so much fucking effect on his games. You could let people play Metal Gear and then Death Stranding and not tell them anything, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, the same people made this, huh?"
And in
Right?
this and it
It's a fucking farce.
and in this case, it's not just that thing about like the auteur or so, but it's so much deeper because while we touched on it earlier, to specify, the cultural collective they made was something that existed before the game studio did, right? This was the original grouping of like those creators that they wanted to work on all kinds of other things. So I got actually a hot tip. Good old Plague was letting me know about how apparently the Disco Elysium the Discord has kind of turned into like just a massive investigative whodunit and what happened and why and how and trying to figure out everything about this. And then a pretty interesting post I see here came in from someone who in Estonia was describing, I guess, to the best of their ability, what's going on. So yeah, this person said, I understand a lot of Western press view Zaum as a game studio, but they're not. The cultural collective and this whole tragedy is actually a huge thing over here. Zaum is an extremely prolific cultural collective and put out literature, criticism, zines, and a lot of work in the past decade. And this bullshit is dismantling one of Estonia's very few cultural production houses of note. Three main actors involved, which were the people, Kurvitz, Hindpierre, and Rostov, and the founder Luiga, are not game devs or industry people, but musicians, authors, critics, and activists. The game is just one of hundreds of works output from the collective since their founding, and this one that called for foreign capital to realize the project once they decided to run with it. The UK.
I want to point out before you go on further, I'm looking at the credits list, and the people listed as leaving are together lead writer, secondary writer, lead designer, art, and design. Lead.
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah. So, oh yeah, no, it's pronounced Zinus, right? Like Magazinus. That's
yeah,
how you say it.
Magazinus. Yeah, you're right. You're
Got
right.
it.
Yeah.
The UK investors in the game were the ones negotiating the right sale to Amazon for the adaptation. Zaum wasn't happy, and a lot of finance bullshit happened that ended up stealing the game as an adaptation of Kurvitz's book from out from under him, and the cultural collective. So many here are just leaving, knowing that they don't have control over their own IP anymore. Estonia doesn't have much good going on here right now in the country's second slide into fascism, and Zaum were among the small bright spots we had. So that kind of paints it in an especially like fucked light, because it's like, damn, there was way more going on than the video game, and certainly not anything that I knew about prior to this announcement, you know?
What a pile of fucking shit.
Yup. The first game is going to forever be calling out everything else that happens in the rest of this franchise.
You will be able to take a quote from a character in Disco Elysium to now shit on any other Disco Elysium product to ever come out.
It's kind of amazing.
You know what I just?
There's
oh
a
my
there's a
god!
slight twist though, in that once again the prequel, not prequel, but the previous book, it exists and is finished. Therefore, like, if they stick to the script on that, they are using Kurvitz's words to do so.
So Wooly, when you did the political quest line in Disco, which one did you do?
I tried to, I did I think we ended up ultra liberal.
So I don't know what happens in the ultra liberal quest line because I did the communist one, and this whole situation is so fascinating to me because The communist quest line is basically what has just happened. The communist quest line in Disco is about constantly going to hang out with your communist friends and wasting your time talking about communism and climbing all up your own ass about the theory of communism.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide to build a metaphorical deck of cards for communism. And for one shining moment, it looks like it's not going to tip over. And then it immediately crumbles.
uh,
And
that's great.
they get to stand there and just look at it for like a second,
Yeah.
going, I can't believe we did it. We
Yeah.
built it. And then it falls to pieces. And then I got my favorite prompt in the entire game, in which Harry asks the communist guy you're talking to, ask Harry, so what is the big question? And I failed my rhetoric check, and Harry blurts out, are women the bourgeoisie? And the dude is so stunned about how insanely misguided and misogynistic it is that he doesn't even know how to respond. And
Fuck.
and that's kind of what happened. Disco should not have, like, we've seen a lot of games fail their own development, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like the way it's told. I can't believe Disco Elysium came out, and I can't believe it made enough money that they were able to find a voice actor willing to do it who wasn't a real voice actor,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Also
he
a
did such
musician.
an that he also did such an excellent job. And the game came out and it's perfect, and it's been perfect for less than a year before it's all fallen to pieces. And it's like the fact that they have such a direct analog to the company's own real dissolution inside their game is
Literally
kind of unbelievable.
Fortress Occident, right? Like they're telling you about the impossibility and and like just you're walking through the haunted remains of a former game studio. You know, like it's beyond on the nose. It is like inside the nose, creating it like structurally. Um, yeah, and you have to assume that like the only way any of that was able to happen was because the investor was content to simply hand over the money and just walk away and say, "Give me back more when I come back later," you know. And then once it became a fucking global phenomenon because the quality exploded out of the game, it became a matter of like, oh no, now there needs to be more attention paid. This is a whole thing, you know. Always, 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 always.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I don't think there's
I'm
any game that more perfectly represents the phrase lightning in a bottle.
so the what you're describing is kind of like the devs and the collective making the game and having that one shining moment. The ultra
Yeah.
liberal quest consists of you meeting a mega rich lightbending guy and then deciding to become a man of immense worth. And to become a man of immense worth, one needs to raise their net worth overall. And so a new counter appears next to your real, and it is your net worth. And your real might be in the negatives, but your net worth, though, right? It all depends on what you own. So, in order to become a man of immense worth, you must travel around and talk to various people throughout the game. And you ultimately start by you have to work through bargaining ownership of things that are just words based on promises, and then you eventually bargain your way into like, you walk by the shop, by the pawn shop, and you're like, oh, that lamppost, yeah, like I need to get something like that, and that'll have my name on it, and then everyone will know I'm a man of great worth, and you're able to negotiate for it. But you can't take it with you. You can't carry it. You can't bring it anywhere. So then, what we can put your name on it, I suppose. And then the clout starts to build, and you become a man of worth, and your value goes up, and then you start working your way through different people in the environment, until eventually, like, it comes down to like putting. Getting the big statue renovated, or so it might seem, in town, but the entire thing sends you around hustling and bustling, and yeah, like NFTing people, like just top to bottom, but nothing physical or tangible is ever actually exchanged. There's never anything real. It's just words, and words eventually make that number go up. you know? And it's just this kind of incredible thing where, like, yeah, by the end you're that you've gotten that number to astronomical value, and nothing in the real world has changed. You have
You're
not
still broke and you're still drunk.
you have not created anything. You have not contributed anything. You have done absolutely nothing to affect the physical world. But through words and promises, you are a man of excessive wealth. And you being managed by what's his name, fucking
Life ending guy?
no, fuck up, the fuck up, idiot doom spiral is
Oh, God.
steps in as your manager to, like, to take control of the situation, and like, now that you're a man of great wealth, you're going to need someone to help you manage all of that, and who better, and it's nothing. It's just fucking hours of side quest over nothing. It's incredible. Yeah.
I gotta play that game again.
Uh, yeah. So and in that role, like, where you're talking to Light Bending guy, and you're going back, and you're getting that number up. It's like, good for you, man. You did it. You spoke the words, and then the words made the value happen, and then you had nothing to do with the outcome of anything in the real world. But boy, did that value sure go up. And in the end, that's how you win the day. It's fucking. It's such a bummer. It's such a goddamn fucking bummer.
uh,
But it's the most disco way to go out. Yeah. Beginning, middle, and end of an era of a story. In a flash in the pan. They can't take whatever disco is. That first experience, everyone that we all had with it, that can never be taken away, man.
I can immediately see Disco being one of those games where in like 18 years people are like, how do I run Disco Elysium on Windows Linux?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't. Dude, well, whatever. That game's old. No, no, you don't get it.
And yeah, I will not hold my breath. I will not, expect any news in the future. But if those fucking geniuses decide that they would like to do more in this industry, I'm sure the goodwill of thousands are behind them to make that happen. But if they also, are people who look at and went, yeah, fuck that, back to what we are trying to do here, which is other things in the real world, then I understand, But goddamn, is there a precedent in this industry for, your baby being stolen from the crib, and then you've got to go and build it all again, and this time you do it with blackjack and hookers in a way where no one can take it from you until they try to take it from you again.
Yeah, literally. Like until they Oh man, watch Disco the final or cut come out, in which you could fight your wife.
Like, I mean, so the only like, there's a lot of ways this is gonna go wrong and horrible, but like one of the ways that I would accept is if the remaining people who are there who are not gonna walk because they have a job and mouths to feed s-
Right.
create a product that is about the shell that is empty, that is left behind and going hollow, going as you sink into the pail, you know? If they make something that is all about that core being lost, effectively, there might be something to say there. But even in and of itself, it'll still be like a part of the problem. Like it's still the sequel that is. Yes, it's calling itself out, but what does that? What does it change? You know? Oh man. Anyway, can't wait.